So Akshat is here to give today's presentation. Please give him a warm welcome in the chat, everyone. And Akshat, you're more than welcome to share your screen and get going.
Awesome. Okay,
Awesome.
let's get
Cool.
going. So first of all, hello everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Canto Hackathon. Hope you guys attended the workshop yesterday. Neobase conducted one on Blank Rasa, the NFT platform on Canto, and today I'll be talking about Canto DEX and a lot of peripherals around that, right? So recently, as Neobase, we created an interface called pools.canto.io. And this is the main interface now, which everyone will be using in the Canto community to interact with the Canto DEX, right? So, so first things first, let's try to understand Canto DEX. So, Canto DEX is the main decentralized exchange on Canto. Everyone must have seen the pools on Canto.io, right? So these ones are the main pools part of the Canto decentralized exchange, and they form like the basis of like a lot of infrastructure around Canto, right? So the decentralized exchange itself is similar to Solidly, which in turn is similar to Uniswap V2, right? So here we're going to talk about a bit about Solidly. So as everyone knows, Uniswap has XY is equal to K pools. So for example, a liquidity pool will contain two tokens, the X token and the Y token. And the invariant that these pools follow is that X into Y is usually constant. So that means that the price of any asset X or Y is calculated by the ratio of these tokens in the pool, right? So for example, in these pools on Canto.io, this pool contains the two tokens Canto Atom, Canto ETH, Canto Note, right? So this is Uniswap V2. Now what Solidly did was that they identified that there are different kinds of pools also, which are called stable pools, right? So stable pools are assets which have direct correlation to other and they follow each other's price, right? For example, they can be stable coins. There can be a pool contain a wrapped token and an unwrapped token, or different kinds of wrapping of the same token, right? And it operates under the assumption that the price of two assets is going to be very close to each other, right? So essentially they come up with a new formula, which is x cube y plus y cube x is equal to k compared to xy is equal to k, because it allows for much higher volume at low slippage, right? So for example, even I have a graphing calculator here. We can see that um, like xy is equal to k. If you try to plot the red line, it turns out to be a graph like this. And then we plot x cube y plus y cube x equal to constant, the graph turns out to be like this, right? So here we can see that the blue graph, which is for stable coins, provides much more leniency towards the point where these converge. That essentially means that when the prices of these tokens are together, like very close to each other, which is the operation that we operate under in stable swaps, we come up with a more efficient mathematics to swap stable coins, right? So the Canto DEX is essentially a fork of Solidly. It has two kinds of pool, namely your volatile pools, which we talked about with XY is equal to K. And then we have the stable pools where both these assets approximately follow the same price. And therefore, we can use a different formula to do the calculation, right? So this is the basis of Canto DEX. Um, One more important thing is that we all know Canto follows the free public infrastructure paradigm, and the DEX, along with the lending market and the stable coin Canto, the stable coin note, forms like the very basis of this free public infrastructure, right? So how FPI sort of ties into this Canto DEX is that Canto has removed all LP fee, right? So while swapping through any of these pools on the Canto DEX, we don't have to pay any fee for the liquidity providers, and therefore the protocol sort of becomes free public infrastructure, right? So this was like a major change which was done from Solidly and Uniswap, which makes this Canto DEX unique, right? And yeah, essentially, the fee is not taken while doing the swaps, right? So now, Canto officially from Canto's side, there are five major pools. We have Canto Atom, Canto ETH, Canto Node, Node USDC, and Node USDT, right? But we just discussed that there is no fee for swapping. So this begs the question: how does one get incentivized to put LP in it, right? So for these official five pairs, Canto, as everyone knows from the beginning, has been giving out emissions. So here we can see that this APR essentially is given by the Canto community pool and the emissions from there, right? So these are the five main pools funded and incentivized by Canto officially. However, Canto DEX, as it is permissionless, anyone can come and create more pools for any sort of ERC20 token that they want using the Canto DEX, right? So this is what we're going to talk about, the interface for pools on Canto, which extends these five pools to include all the other pools which are available on Canto, right? So yeah, we can now quickly go through pools. So first here, this is the pools homepage. The DApp is like quite similar to the Canto DApp, and it follows the same design language, but we've tried to keep it simple, right? So first we can see that it lists your pairs. Essentially, your pairs are the pairs I've provided liquidity in. And here we can see that there is WCanto cadence pair. So here we can see that it not only supports these five ones, which are like official Canto verified, official pairs verified the Canto, but we also support like any sort of pair related to ERC20 token, right? So here one example is Cadence. Cadence, as you guys know, is very popular in Canto ecosystem, and they're also going to hold a workshop with respect to their perpetuals platform. But they did their token launch recently on Canto, and this Canto DEX pool essentially is now used to trade Cadence on Canto, right? So this Cadence was like a big use case recently where they came in and they created a pool on Canto DEX, and then which is now being used to trade the Cadence token, right? So similarly, if any of the projects want to do like a token launch or want to create their own token and want it to be tradable, they can use this pools interface to like actually create a pair and add liquidity to it, right? Cool. So here we can look at basic operations. As I said, it only has Canto officially only supports five pairs, but Canto DEX being permissionless, we can virtually create any pair, right? So here in the main page, we have listed down a few popular pairs in the Canto ecosystem outside the main five pairs. So these are essentially the Cadence pool. There's a very famous meme coin, Omnicat. So that also seems to have picked up a lot of liquidity on Canto. And then, as we all remember, CNU from the OG days, the original meme coin on Canto. So that also has like a huge decent liquidity on this Canto DEX, right? So here are these three pools which were unrelated to the main Canto ecosystem or infrastructure, but then later came on and were added to Canto DEX. And essentially, these three are one of the famous ones. Canto DEX, because it being permissionless, you can add any pools. So here in all pairs, you can see that there are some random ones as well with like very less liquidity and stuff like that, right? So anyone can come in. We can see that there are a lot of tests created by random people and things like that because it's permissionless. But this interface can be used to interact with almost like any pool on Canto, right? Okay, so we're gonna quickly try adding and removing liquidity from like this interface. So for example, let's try to find a pair. I want to add liquidity to Cadence. So I have some Canto in my wallet. So first I'll search for Canto. Here I can find Canto, and then I have some Cadence in my wallet. So I can look for Cadence. One second. Yeah, I think we can simply click here. Here we can see that this is a simple modal to add and remove liquidity. So here I can try put in 3 tokens of Cadence and like 3.5 tokens of Canto. So the liquidity needs to go in like the same ratio as per any other Uniswap V2 fork. So here all we have to do is approve these tokens and just press the confirm transaction to add liquidity to these pools, right? If the pool already does not exist, anyone can come and like create a new pool on the spot, and all they have to do is provide the contract address of the ERC20 token that they're trying to use, and the other token which they're trying to use. So usually the pairs are created with respect to Canto. So as we can see that the CNO pool and the Cadence pool is created with respect to Canto, but it virtually allows anyone to create any sort of pool. So here you can see we have successfully added some liquidity. Let's try to see the transaction which just got executed to add liquidity. So here on tuber.build, we can see that from my wallet, around 3 Cadence and 3.5 Canto was transferred. And then we got 3.25 amount of this LP token, which was minted, right? So here you can see that this was a volatile pair, W Canto / Cadence. Your Canto automatically gets wrapped to W Canto because we need ERC20 token to interact with the platform. But essentially, this is like a W Canto pool, right? So here in the transaction, we can see that I had to let go of these tokens and I got like a LP token in return, right? On the UI as well, here I can see my position. I have some Cadence Canto liquidity in my wallet, and then I can like try to withdraw it. And when I withdraw it, I'll essentially receive like whatever Cadence and Canto I put in earlier, right? So this is like the main operation of adding and managing liquidity on any of these pools on Canto.io, right? So yeah, this is essentially Canto.io. So now we can do a deep dive into these pools. We can sort of see what information we have about these pools. And then after that, we're going to talk about a bit about incentivization for these pools, right? Because right now, Canto is free public infrastructure. The LPs do not have any fee. So therefore, there needs to be a model for incentivization of these LPs, which we're going to talk about, right? So yeah, so this is like to summarize, this is like the interface. For swapping these tokens, we obviously know Slingshot is like the leader here in the Canto ecosystem, and all these pairs which you create automatically get added to the Slingshot because Slingshot tracks the Canto DEX liquidity, right? So whatever pools that we create on this Canto DEX, given enough liquidity, it is tradable on Slingshot, right? So this is I think this is a very important interface, especially for people who are trying to like launch an ERC20 token on Canto, and then you can like essentially use this interface to provide liquidity and kickstart your pool on Canto and Slingshot. Right. Okay. So this is the Pools interface. We also have like a cool light mode for those who want to view the website in light mode. Okay. So next, let's talk about analytics. So every pool that we see here, we don't we to keep, for the sake of simplicity, we show like bare minimum information to keep it simple. But if you want to see a lot of information about any of these pools, we can essentially use the analytics page, right? So let's try having a look at that. All right. So this is analytics.neobase.1. We have been running analytics since like the early days of Canto, but recently only we did like a huge upgrade and we updated the UI. Um, so essentially, this page provides like all the information related to Canto DEX, right? So we can go like do like a quick walkthrough to it. So for example, in the beginning, we can start off with liquidity. So here, currently, liquidity means how much total is locked in the Canto DEX, including all the pairs that we saw. So right now, we can see that the liquidity is around 21 mil note, and the volume is around um, 9 million note um, recently, right? And then you can toggle between these day charts and week charts, and then you can view these charts in full screen as well, right? Um, Next, coming to the tokens. Oh yeah, and one more thing. We only saw that in the main Canto UI, there are like only 5 main pairs related to the Canto DEX. But here you can see that there are actually a lot more pairs on the Canto DEX. And because of its, again, the permissionless nature, anyone can come and create these pairs on the Canto DEX, right? So right now it contains like 150 pairs, which is a lot. And then we can see that it has gone through like a lot of transactions total, which is like around 8.25 million, right? Cool. Now let's talk about the tokens. Here we can see like all the popular tokens right now on like in the Canto ecosystem, starting with Note, Canto, USDC, ETH, and then we have, as I discussed, the other meme coins as well, Sinu, Omni, and then like the Cadence protocol, right? So here we can sort by liquidity. Here, essentially, default sorting by liquidity gives us all the top tokens, and yeah, mm, it's like yeah. So here are all the top tokens sorted by liquidity. Yeah. So after that, we can have a look at the top pairs. Oh, first we can look at like statistics for each token. Okay, so this is like the individual page for Ethereum on Canto. Here you can see the contract address of Ethereum. You can see the recent trend, whether it has gone up and down. We can see total liquidity. Total liquidity means how much is logged across all the different pairs, its volume, the number of transactions, and the liquidity change over a week, month, or like since the inception. Similarly, the total volume since the inception of Canto. And then here we can track the price of the token with respect to Note, right? For the respective token, we can also see the pairs it's involved in. So for example, ETH is primarily involved in the ETH Canto pair, but also it acts as the base asset, primary base assets for the OmniCat token, which is ETH Omni pair, right? So here you can see like for any token present in the Canto ecosystem, what pairs sort of it's part of. And also here, there's a good summarization of all the transactions which took place responding to that token, right? So this is like an interface for these tokens, and then you can actually look at virtually any token, any information about your token, and even if you launch your own token, and if it's part of Canto DEX and if it has generated volume on the Canto DEX, it should automatically start showing up here. So we are like sort of indexing all the tokens on the network, and then like if you know the address to your token, you can just probably plug it in here and see like all the statistics, right? So here also, for example, we looked at Ethereum. This is like the cadence pool. We can see that yeah, it got incepted in recently only in Feb 24, and then the main pair for this cadence token is wcanto/cadence, and then all the other transactions which are going through with respect to this cadence pool, right? So these are essentially all the information. This is all the information with respect to the tokens, and then to trade these tokens, as I mentioned before, there's a hyperlink which takes you to Slingshot, and then Slingshot is automatically connected to your DEX and given enough liquidity. So how Slingshot works is that it whitelists pools. So if a pool has enough liquidity, then that is it automatically becomes tradable on Slingshot, right? So again, if you're a platform who's trying to like create a new pair or a new token on Canto, you can provide liquidity through the pools platform, and once there's enough liquidity, it becomes tradable on the Slingshot interface, right? So this is like the token interface. Now also we can do a deep dive into pairs. So earlier at the pools page, we were looking at like the Canto cadence pair, but here once if you click on that, we can get like a lot more information about this pair, right? So here we can see that again, the total liquidity, the volume, and the number of transactions for this particular pair with respect to week, month, and then all, and then information like volume. And then here we are interested in both the charts. Canto's price with respect to cadence and cadence price with respect to Canto. And then obviously we know they are ratios of amount of cadence and amount of Canto present in a pool, right? So these values are inverse, and then we can like toggle between them to see like the graph on Neobase Analytics. And then similarly to tokens, you can see like all the transactions which were initiated by this pair, right? This also includes like transactions, whether it was swapped or like whether liquidity was added or whether liquidity was removed. And then here we can see that literally as part of this demo, we added 3.5 WCanto and 3 cadence Canto liquidity, and we can like show, we can see this here, right? So you can see, so again, if you are like a person who is coming on Canto and trying to create liquidity for your own token, you can come here to track all your liquidity additions, liquidity removals, all the transactions, and virtually anything to do with your token and your pair on Canto DEX, right? So yeah, this is essentially Canto Analytics and everything about the Canto DEX and the pools on Canto, right? So this was like the first part. Yeah, as well as the first part, we can also see like here also we have implemented light mode. So if you guys want to see all these interesting charts in light mode, you can do so, right? Yeah, so this was like part one of the workshop. I'm gonna take a quick pause here, and everyone can let me know like if you guys have any questions, and then I'll quickly move on to like the next part, which is essentially the incentivization of these pools that we just discussed on Canto.
Cool. I guess if anyone has any questions, you guys want to pop those in the chat. Could be on anything that Akshat has just mentioned.
Awesome. I'll just wait one more minute. Some people
Yeah.
seem to be typing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, someone asked what's the liquidity threshold for a coin to become tradable on Canto. So, a coin is tradable on Canto anyway, given it has very less liquidity. Um, I think what you mean to ask is what's the threshold for a coin to be tradable on Slingshot. So I think we can confirm that with Slingshot, but if around I think 50k liquidity is present in like the DEX pool, it becomes tradable on Slingshot, right? So yeah, so that's the answer to your question. But if you want to just create a token and make it tradable, that is completely permissionless, and you can do it through Canto.io or pools.canto.io. There is no other a minimum liquidity required, right? So if you want, so again, AJ, if you're trying to ask if any token on Canto can be listed, Yeah, you can create any token and add it to the Canto DEX. But if you want it to be tradable on Slingshot, you have to add enough liquidity, which is around 50K, for it to be like listed or like available on Slingshot, essentially. Right. Okay. Cool. I think that's it with the questions. We can move on to part 2. Okay, so I'll start sharing my screen again. So now, part 2 essentially talks about, as I said, that um, Canto DEX itself is FPI. So what this means is that there is no fee being given to the LP providers for swapping, right? So now this begs the question that how am I incentivized to put liquidity in the pool, right? Because I'm not getting any percentage of the swaps, right? So how this works is that we have adopted a very similar model to Curve DAO, and we have come up with a new system called Canto NeoFinance Coordinator, right? And this Canto NeoFinance Coordinator is quite new. We are still going through iterations, and I think a new version is going to get deployed very, very soon, sometime this week. So essentially, what it does is that it's voting escrow incentivization system for Canto. And it is very similar to the VE curve model, right? So we can try to first quickly understand the VE curve model. This model is like very famous and is being used to provide liquidity incentivization for a lot of different pools. And a lot of different protocols are sort of forking Curve and making their changes to like incentivize pools, right? So this is something called part of Curve DAO. We can have a look at their GitHub. Yes. So Curve DAO, essentially, it's the main Curve governance contracts, and interestingly enough, they were written in Viper. It's not even Solidity, right? So what happens is that we can do a quick walk. Yeah. So Curve for on their platform has a lot of pools, like Canto. On Canto has a lot of pools. So for example, these are like the Curve pools. We have USDC Curve USDC, then we have USDT Curve USDC, then we have a combination of USDT BTC ETH, then we have a combination of Frax and DAI, and then we have a combination of let's say Convex and WETH, right? So these are all the different pools present on Curve, and like for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just gonna like try to draw an one-to-one comparison to Canto. So similarly on Canto, we have pools like ETH Canto or Note USDC or Note USDT, which we just saw, right? So now Curve has this system to incentivize these pools by doing a voting, right? So Curve distributes its rewards as a Curve token, and these Curve tokens come from an emission pool, which is very similar to the emission pool which we have on Canto, right? So what happens is that if you have the Curve token, you can lock it to get a VE curve, and then owning VE curve gives you some special voting rights, right? And what these voting rights are, you can just essentially vote that X percentage of the main community pool, the rewards from there should go to this particular pool, right? So for example, if I have the curve token, if I have logged some curve token, then I get like some 100 points worth of voting power, and I can just say that this particular pool should receive 80% of the rewards, and this particular pool should receive 20% of the rewards, right? So now, which pool is going to receive how many rewards is no longer like decided by the Curve protocol, but instead the voters, the members of the Curve DAO, the people who have locked their Curve to get VE Curve, they get a chance to vote and decide which pool is going to get how many emissions, right? So this is like the basic working of Curve. Um, these votes happen every week. For example, every 7 days there'll be a vote. People holding the VE Curve token will vote on these different pools, and then for the duration of that particular week, the distributions from the main Curve emission pool, the rewards from the main Curve pool, will be distributed to these holders in the ratio of the votes that the pool received, right? So this is something we're trying to do on your finance coordinator. For example, this is like the last week votes on official Curve website. Here we can see that the most famous pool, Curve plus Convex Curve, received like 7.7% of all the total votes. So this particular pool liquidity providers will be receiving like 7.7% of all the rewards given from the emissions pool, right? And here also, to visualize better, this is like an interface to lock these tokens. Um, the longer you lock the token for, the more voting power you get. So, for example, if I have 1,000 curve, I lock it for 1 week, my voting power is going to be 7 curve. But if I lock it for 4 years, my voting power is going to be around 1,000 curve, right? 1,000 VE curve. So that's a lot. You also need V curve to create a proposal, but I think, yeah. So there are like a few changes which was done from this original implementation of curve. Um, and yeah, this is like the inspiration behind Canto Finance Coordinator. So we can probably quickly go through the changes which were done from Curve. So this system contains like three main smart contracts. Again, this might become a bit technical, but like, yeah, bear with me. So these three main contracts, first is the voting escrow. So voting escrow is again, it's a port of the Curve's original implementation, and we have added modifications to support native tokens, right? So for example, your Curve is a ERC20 token, but here we want to use Canto, so we have to inculcate native tokens as well. And then instead of having a variable time, we switched it to having a fixed time for 5 years for locking your Canto to get VE Canto, right? So once you lock your Canto, you get VE Canto, and then we move to the next stage, which is the gauge controller. So as far as nomenclature is concerned, each of these votes on a particular LP pool are called gauges, right? And whatever vote this LP pool receives is called the gauge relative weight, right? So for here example, this gauge controller contract is responsible for tracking all these gauges. So in the Canto ecosystem, the potential gauges that we're going to have is going to be um, the different LP pools which are created, right? For example, the Canto cadence pools can be a gauge, the ETH Omni pool can be a gauge, etc. Right? And then this controller is responsible for the voting. So people who have locked the VE Canto can vote, and then based on that vote, how much of one epoch's Canto emissions, which are given by the community pools, allocated to that gauge. And then this, after the voting has been done, this controller can be used to query the final votes for all the gauges for any time in the past, right? And then the third component main, which is the lending ledger. Lending ledger keeps track of how much liquidity a user has provided. So like if I provided liquidity to the Cadence Canto pool, as we saw, this lending ledger will take in account, okay, that this person has given this much liquidity or withdrawn this much liquidity. And then based on the amount of liquidity you've put in pool, you can receive your rewards from like the lending ledger, right? So the governance is responsible for calling these rewards and sending these rewards, and then interacting with like the lending ledger to distribute the tokens, right? um this particular component is not permissionless. It's sort of permissioned by governance. So if we want to enable or whitelist more gauges or more markets for it to work with this coordinator, it needs to be explicitly approved by the governance. So the governance can set a proposal, and the proposal can be to add this particular token to NeoFinance coordinator. And once that has been done, the NeoFinance coordinator can be used to incentivize um, and get rewards, Canto rewards for that particular pool, right? So this sort of forms like the missing piece of incentivization of these pools, because we saw that sort of DEX is FPI and does not have any fee, right? So this is what is being used to incentivize these pools, and we have created like the Canto Finance coordinator in such a way that it not only now supports the LP pools on the Canto DEX, but the same thing can be plugged in with like the lending markets and like the RWA markets on Canto, right? So this coordinator is already being used by Vivacity Finance, and the rewards for putting it in their RWA pool are coming straight from this Canto Finance coordinator, right? And in the next deployment, which we're gonna do very very soon, we're gonna enable the use of Canto Finance coordinator directly with the Canto DEX. So now, if you're launching a new token and you even want to give an incentive or an APY or an APY for this token, you can essentially come to the NeoFinance coordinator and then give a proposal to the governance to include your token. And once that is done, you can simply, like, the token will be incentivized as well, like the LP for the token, right? So yeah, this is the second part, which is the Canto NeoFinance coordinator. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Let me know if you guys have any more questions. We're very close to deploying the second version. It has also recently gone through the audit, which will be made public very, very soon. And yeah, just like so happy to see very, very exciting times on Canto, and a lot of activity has been going on. And it's really very interesting to see so many people interact and participate in the hackathon. And I think, yeah, as Neobase, we've been working as core contributors to Canto for a while, and we have like a lot of products in the ecosystem which you can check out, which can help you in like your hackathon, like analytics, Neobase, and other things like that. So I think, yeah, that is pretty much it. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions. We can take a minute for that, and yeah.
Awesome. If anyone, okay, quick question in the chat.
Okay. Okay, so condensed milk. So this documentation is not yet available on docs.cantor.io. The things that I showed you were essentially a bit pre-launch, but we'll be adding all this documentation very, very soon in the Canto ecosystem. But these pages are quite new. They have gone through soft launch, so you can definitely have a look, but we'll make sure we'll inculcate all these docs very soon.
Awesome, cool. And if anyone has any extra questions, is there any way they can either get in touch with you or the team?
Yeah, so feel free to DM us on Twitter. I can just drop the handle here. I think that can be done, or you guys can like directly text me on Telegram. That also works. So I'm just gonna drop the Neobase handle here on Twitter. And also you can like try to ping us on Discord or like anywhere else. We're quite active around the Canto ecosystem. So we should be able to like help you guys out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. Great. Awesome. Good to see your responses in the chat. Yeah, so please do join us, I believe, for more workshops tomorrow. If I've remembered that correctly. Yes, indeed. And yeah, everyone, please also get in touch on the Telegram chat if you need anything from myself. We will be organizing some office hours at some point so you can get technical support. But for the time being, just ping me, let me know, and I can help you out there. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you so much, Akshat, for joining us today, walking us through everything. Cool. Right, well, I will say goodbye now. See you all tomorrow, everyone. Bye.